Okay. So I had some other stuff on my mind I just wanted to talk about. Uh, there's a lot of things that have been happening lately, and it helps me to like reflect back on what I go through in my day, because a lot of stuff we all go through, can help someone else. Just bringing that to awareness. But I recently talked with my pastor, and he helped me to realize a point. I had it in my mind, but it's we can choose to be happy. Although we're going through battles, things are just hitting the fan. We can choose to stay in the feeling that we have, the anger, the pain, the frustration. It's hard to get out of that mindset, or when you're going through whatever you're going through, but challenging your mind, challenging shedding who you are and how that's making you feel. We can choose to stay in that, or we can accept, and address it, and then work on it and move on. you know it's like whenever someone's arguing with you, or whenever you're just battling through anger or frustration, there's an inner peace we have. It's a lot of the times we don't acknowledge that, we don't see that, because we're so focused on the feelings that we're having. And I think ultimately we would find more happiness if you know we we acknowledge that we have that in us. So it's we're finding that peace inside, because whatever's going outside is, it's like when you're meditating, right? There's different ways to meditate, but when you're focused on your breathing, you're inside, of your peace. But when we're too caught up in all this stuff going out, it's like it's counter effective. We're not focused. We're just feeling, which that's not bad, but it can lead to other things. But yeah, I just wanted to bring up that like whenever we're going through stuff, trying to address like how it's making us feel, and maybe try to make some steps to get out of that mindset, what you're going through. Ultimately, practicing that, I've found, helps you to kind of be more centered throughout your day, and you're able to get more stuff done. You're able to, think of other things. So I think that's like a really strong key point. But also remembering that nothing's going to be perfect. And I was just reading the rest of Psalms 23. The Lord is my shepherd, and it's like with you know the Lord's going. You're going to be preparing a table, before you, right, and in the midst of your enemies. And that resonated with me, because the Lord's going to be He's going to be building you, right? You're going to have other things going on in your life, and He's going to be building you. And, it's for us to, trust in His love, for us. Because if we're not focused on Him, then we're going to be focused on what the enemy's trying to tell us. And, it just resonated with me, because when you're building, that's the table. The Lord's adding on to you. And once that table's done, and it's built, and then of course you go on to the next thing in your life that needs to be addressed, needs to be built, needs to evolve. And I like that passage, because in the midst of your enemies around you, not that loved ones or enemies, just in your friends, but like the devil's going to be using certain things throughout your day or your life to nag at you, to try to break you, try to keep you from your focus. And I think it's really important, and I'm preaching that to myself too, and I'm learning this, that, you know, we center ourselves with Christ, because, without him, a lot of the stuff we go through, it's going to crumble, it's going to fall. And yeah, you might find that center for a little while, but if we don't have his spirit inside of us, that seed isn't able to grow and blossom. And I tell you, I've seen it, I've had it happen with me to other people. Like you're focused, you're building, and then you're able to spread that to other people. And then, like I always say, it's like a domino effect, and it is, and it's powerful. And I mean, I think that's the goal in life, is just loving, loving being alive, and it's not the easiest thing to say, because like I've suffered with a lot of stuff in the past that it's hard to see values in life, right? But once we get to a certain level of understanding, and you kind of grow up, and you get out of certain mindsets of the pity, but that's easier said than done, because there's a lot of factors that go into the mindset, and like how people perceive things, because there's mental health and stuff, and then there's a bunch of other stuff. But ultimately, us not staying in one place. Comfort is good, but I've been learning that comfort can hold you back, because then you're just idly sitting, and you could be praying for things in life, blessings. Yes, the Lord will bless you, but if you don't take that step, because you can't just pray for it and it happen. I mean, miracles do happen, but there's things we need to learn in our path. There's lessons we need to be added on to us that builds us for the next stages in life. There's an analogy I like using. First off, the fact that you keep trying is the fact that you will succeed. That's the one thing I always love telling people, because it's true. You try, you learn, and you're succeeding, you're growing, But the things we've been through in life, the trials, the defeats, all the painful, yucky stuff, that isn't, happened to us, inside, in our emotions, or just, encounters in general that, just were not nice, right? Those build us, and gives us armor. Once we triumph in those battles, it gives us armor. And then what does that do? The armor shields us, and gives us protection, and builds us for the next part in our life. And it's just something that is just very powerful, and all the tools, although you fail, yes, you failed, but that doesn't define you. It just means that you needed some extra tools. But what happens when you keep trying from the failure? Eventually you get the tools necessary to move past that failure. And then some failures take a lifetime, some take, half a life, or, vice versa, or whatever with that. But it's the fact that, you're trying, you're getting up, you're not letting it defeat you. Because like in the movie Rocky, I forget which one it was, but he was saying, think to a son in the scene, life, will beat you down, and it will leave you there permanently if you let it. And that resonated with me, because, I've been there, right? And, I think a lot of us have at one point in our life, or are, and it's hard to move past things. And I'm preaching to myself too, because I feel that. And that's why, like, whenever I say something, I like to reflect it on myself, because I have so much to learn. I'm very young, but, and I think it gets turned around, like with, like when you have people in your life, right, and, things are rocky, and then, like, you start to question sometimes if it becomes very frequent or just long term, you start to question things like, are they right for me, this and that. You start questioning. But challenge this. See, like it's good to grow. It's good to not have certain people that will hold you back, but also see other points of views and sides, like you know would it affect them too. It's good to think about yourself, but ultimately thinking about others too, because that's what life is. Because if we start getting all about thinking about just ourselves, then we become just focused on us, and that can become dangerous. There is two sides to that, because it depends on the situation in life. But I think keeping others hearts in mind too, because they might need you. They could be battling through something, and that consistency, although it might hurt, could help them. It could build them, into a next stage in their life. And there's another thing I was listening to on a podcast. People will come in your lives at the time you needed them. You needed them the most. It's like we wonder why certain people leave, right? And it's not that they're a bad person. It just either means they weren't for you, you weren't for them, and eventually, relationship, friendship, family, they're going to find what they're searching for. And like my brother, told me, your focus becomes your reality. And it's very short, very sweet, and very powerful. And, it's a lot of things I'm trying to work on too. But, ultimately just growing each day. And, like off my anime Naruto, I think Might Guy and Rock Lee, they had a scene when they were fighting, and with their team, it's becoming better than we were yesterday. And it's very powerful. And it's just trying, growing, failing, learning. And I think Denzel Washington said, fail big. Don't be afraid to fail, because there's honor, there's growth and failure. That's how we learn. And so I just wanted to make another kind of an in-depth and serious like talk, because a lot of people are busy, and it's respectable. But it's if I just reach one person, I've always said that, that's all I care about. I want that one person. They could be battling through something so strong that maybe the Lord's going to use me to put my words, through my words in their path, and something could resonate. And that's what it's all about. Spreading joy, love, and building people. We mess up, we fall down, but you get back up and you try again. That's what another day's for. But I just want to say I love y'all, and I hope this finds somebody that might need the words. And just keep trying. You got it. Peace and love.